on October 22nd, 2013. We're speaking with Richard Beers, who was a 1992, I think 1992, CHSSA Hall of Fame inductee. And we'd just like to find out about this gentleman who did so much for speech in California. So, Richard, where did this all start? Where are you from?
Well, I was born in Twin Falls, Idaho.
Okay.
But I was fortunate enough to be rescued by my parents, brought to California, to Merced, California, when I was 2 years old.
Oh, very young then, yeah.
And I went to all the grade schools in Merced. And then just as I was about to go into Merced High School, that big moment in my life when I could have played in the Merced Bears marching band.
100, I remember them, yes.
I really wanted to be in that band. So I was up at Boy Scout camp at Strawberry Lake and came home, walked into the house, and there wasn't a stick of furniture in it. And my mother says, honey, she says, we're going to move to Chowchilla. Your father has just bought a business there. And so that ruined my dreams for playing in the band in the Merced.
And what did you play in the band?
I played percussion, and I was able to get into the Chowchilla High School marching band, which became more renowned than the Merced band because of the director there.
Well, in those high school days, did you, I don't remember there ever being any speech at Chowchilla, so were you ever involved?
I participated in service clubs, Lions Club, because no one else had the guts to do it. And I found it interesting, but the thing for me was being a thespian.
Oh, you were a dramatist. Okay.
I really enjoyed the theater. As a matter of fact, I had the lead in the senior class play when I was in the 9th grade.
And what did you, in the 9th grade?
That's right.
And what part did you play and what?
Date for Judy, I played Randolph, the little brother.
I remember that when it was on the radio. See, you get two old guys talking, and we're really, really out of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were Chowchilla High School, and then what?
Well, I really didn't know exactly what I wanted to do except to get out of Chowchilla, and Fresno State was just about my speed, and so I checked into Fresno, the State College, and I signed up as a music major with a speech drama minor. And main reason is my mother always wanted me to be a concert pianist, because I started playing the piano when I lived in Merced. And after a while, I just got really, really tired of all of the musicians and the music and everything else. Even though I was in the Fresno State College marching 100-piece neon-lighted band.
Yeah, I remember those days too, because I was also in the band. But okay.
Yeah, it was really exciting, but it taught me one thing, that I didn't want to become a concert pianist. I was not willing to do the rudiments of making that my profession. So I decided to be a speech major and concentrate on drama. And I made the switch after one semester and participated in many of the university's plays. And I decided I didn't really care for that either. But I sure was interested in radio and the new medium of television. And that's where I really got excited. And my concentration was there until such time that I graduated. I worked with a young man by the name of Bob Long, and Bob was my roommate in college, and Bob became quite a notable historian of California history, had his own program on KMJ Fresno, and I worked with him on a lot of the productions, learned a lot from him, real tremendous individual.
But I don't hear forensics, competitive speaking coming in, even in college.
It wasn't there. The other roommate that we had was a gentleman by the name of Jim Browning. Jim Browning was the only debater on the Fresno State team. And I used to travel around with him, and he got me involved in politics in the Republican Party. And Jim went on, incidentally, in life, and he was the prosecutor of Patty Hearst.
Oh my. Okay.
And then he became a federal judge. It interested me, all of this debating business and everything, but radio and television.
Yeah, I know that because that's what brought me to Fresno State was radio.
Oh, and it was a wonderful department. As a matter of fact, in my senior year, I was even playing piano as background music to some of the productions that they were doing. So anyhow, what really happened next was the most significant thing. I graduated mid-year because I had to add a semester on in order to complete my cadet training in the ROTC.
Yeah, I knew you were military, yeah.
Yes, I had to do that because I started late and I had to make up a year. And that's where all of my background in speech and everything really came into focus, because my military AFSC, Air Force Specialty Code, was in communications. And when I got overseas at the end of the Korean War, I had the opportunity to work in headquarters, Far East Air Forces, and I was in charge of press, stories to Life magazine, Saturday Evening Post, and everything coming out of that theater. Well, that really bored me. And I found out that there was a Far East Network, which was part of the Armed Forces Radio and Television Service, was at Camp Drake, which was 16 miles out of Tokyo, where I was living. And this major that I knew there, he felt sorry for me because he knew I was very uncomfortable and living in a magnificent town like Tokyo and everything else. But on a second lieutenant's pay, you just couldn't make it to the end of the month. So he says, I've set up an interview for you with a guy by name of Captain George Kennedy. And you might know that George Kennedy is Cool Hand Luke, and he was my mentor. And he taught me all the ins and outs of radio broadcasting from a military point of view. And in 2 weeks' time, I was sent out into the field as a station manager of a 10,000 watt radio station.
So there, the radio background did more for you.
Oh, yes, it did.
How long were you in the military, Dick?
I retired with 20 years.
20 years, okay.
And that retirement was in 1974. I retired as a lieutenant colonel.
Okay, so we have a long military career, a retirement. We got to get you into forensics here
There you
somewhere. So after the military, did you have to come back and go back to school or for a credential?
I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was thinking about going into a radio with one of the local stations in Fresno. All they wanted to hire was salesmen, and I didn't want to do that. And so some of my old fraternity brothers said, "Well, Richard, why don't you go back and get yourself a teaching credential, an advanced degree, and get out and get on this new bandwagon in education," which was really growing at that time. And I said, well, I might just give it a whirl. And I'm glad I did, because that's where I met my wife.
Okay.
In the grad school. And
still at Fresno State?
Yes, still at Fresno State, yes. And she was also going to Fresno State. And we were married that year. And a funny story about it is that I was offered a job at Fresno High School where I did my student teaching. And she'd already signed a contract in Fresno Unified School District to teach at an elementary school. Well, that wouldn't work, because Fresno in those days had a ruling that a husband and wife could not teach in the same school district. So I said, oh my gosh, what am I going to have to do? And I found a job in Taft, found another one in Bakersfield, and that was just too far for a commute. So somebody said, you know, there's a little old country school district out there in the Fig Orchards called Bullard Unified School District. Why don't you go out there and put in your name? I said, oh my gosh. I said, I'll go out and talk to them. And I drove out, and I had a hard time finding the school. The only way I could find it, I saw the flagpole above the Fig Orchards. And there that little school was. And
when was this?
That was in 1957. And they had only been open 6 months of the previous year. And so I was interviewed by the superintendent of schools and then by the principal, and they decided to give me a whirl as a speech teacher, which I wanted to do, and then I had to teach a class in drama also, which was a piece of cake. But the whole thing about it was, he said, the superintendent says, Mr. Beers, you being an ex-military man, you certainly understand the importance of regiment and orders and everything. He says, I'm going to give you this contract, and I'm going to, after 4 years, if you have a successful debating program, I'm going to let you continue your employment with this.
What a motivator. Oh my, okay.
Yeah, so that was really, really frightening. So, which really comes down to, well, Richard, how did you learn how to debate then? I learned with my students, and it was a great experience. And sometimes they were a little bit more adept to it than I was. But
I bet you caught on in a hurry. Okay, now in those early years, you said 63 was when you started here at Bullard?
57.
Oh, 57.
The
Okay.
original faculty.
The original faculty. Okay, because I first ran into you when I first started teaching, and that was 63, 64.
Mm-hmm.
I remember you scared me to death, but that's probably another story, because I've had people since tell me how I scared them. So we just pass it on. As you got going, obviously knowing you had to have a debate team in 4 years as a winner, did you? I'm sure you
Yes. It was just unbelievable. Those two boys, Richard Gaylor Stearns
did. And Pash.
Pipes,
okay.
those two boys just in a capsule. They went on to the national tournament, but Richard had been recalled in the Air Force to Operation Quick Strike. I was to report to Augusta, Georgia immediately, which, if you're not aware with Quick Strike, it was to let Khrushchev know that the missiles could not be put in Cuba, and we were practicing the invasion of Cuba. And so my student teacher, Elaine Musio, who was
I remember
wonderful
Elaine, yeah.
woman, she decided that she would take the boys for me to the national tournament. And she kept sending me telegrams where I was on duty. And they won again. They won again. They won again. And they got up to the semifinals and lost on a split decision, which then they got the third place award. And I was just thrilled.
Well, I hope that satisfied the principal.
Oh, yes.
It must have, and then you got your contract for the future.
Yeah, well, you know, Richard has a bust and a portrait of him in the Boston Federal Courthouse, and he is the top judge in the appellate courts there. He was an Oxford student after Stanford.
Stanford, Oxford, top judge. Let's give credit to forensics for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And he probably would too.
Yeah, well, and his partner was no slouch. He went on to UOP, University of Pacific, and he and his partner won the National Collegiate Debating Championship. And then he became the lead attorney for the District Attorney's Office in Contra Costa.
Well, I know you had a lot of successes, and certainly these key people. I even remember those two boys because, while in college, I judged and they were very easy to remember. In your years, how many years at Bullard?
35.
35. In those years, just if you can pick out a couple of others that stand out in your mind that were tremendous successes.
Brad Hill and David Pash.
Okay.
Brad Hill is the Superior Appellate Court judge in Fresno.
Okay.
And Pash is in New York City. He is the attorney for the American Football League.
Yeah, that I knew. I was reading about it when that came about a few years ago.
He had a big mess with the team out of Oakland going to LA.
LA.
It was right in the
Right in the middle of that one.
Yeah.
During all this time, what kind of positions did you hold, leadership positions? What did you do with NFL, California High School Speech Association, anything, your league?
Yes, I was in NFL. I was a district chairman, I think 3 different times. I don't know what I did in the league. I remember with CHSSA, I was on the curriculum committee that did the framework.
Okay.
And I think I was on it for, oh my God, 12 years, something like that. Basically, that's all.
Okay. Well, I know I remember you as NFL district chair because always sending everything to you, because at that time, where I was in Modesto, was in the same NFL district as Fresno. Certainly not the case anymore.
Well, one other thing I wanted to mention, I found this card in a file.
I still got mine too, yeah.
Yeah, and it says here on Rick Stearns, this one, Bruno Jacob.
Mm-hmm.
It says first in the U.S. in points, 2 years.
Oh.
Rick Stearns was the point.
Okay, that's the one that became the judge.
Yes.
Yeah.
With the bust in the portrait.
Oh, how about that? Okay, carrying that now a little further, you obviously had many kids to the state tournament. Is there? See if you can think for a minute about if there's a state tournament, not necessarily just a kid, but any state tournament that stands out in your mind as being weird, funny, bad, sad. I stumped it.
They were all very busy.
Yeah.
All of them had many worries, not just the competition, but putting the kids up and worrying about them. And I'll never forget that one time. We used to go to Santa Barbara every year. Wonderful, wonderful tournaments there. And the Grunion were running on this one tournament. And all of the kids knew it, but the coaches didn't. They went out and they were filling briefcases and mailboxes and everything with Grunion. And it was really a smelly, smelly mess. I'll never forget that.
What about nationals? Anything stand out?
You know, I was thinking about that. I was reading some of the comments from people on the national tournament. Other than it's, to me, it's always been extremely well run. Congress, separate, always. Very, very good job on that. And I mean, just to break into the semis, you really accomplished something. And you're always hoping, always hoping. And the only time we ever did it was in debate into the semis a couple times. But other than that, I was always a bridesmaid and never a bride.
And what would you consider, now here's, I want you to brag a little bit now, to think about what do you think would be your greatest contribution to the field of speech education?
I think my greatest contribution is being able to, or hopefully able to pass off my deepest love for the program and its inherent qualities of making great people out of these young men and women. I always wanted to share that with them. When I would see a person with a sparkle in their eye, I said, I want to light up the other eye. And I always enjoyed giving them my best shot. Sometimes I was successful, sometimes I wasn't. But I think that's one of the things that I cherish most about it. And when I started seeing the program starting to go down all over the country as I was getting ready to retire, I never wanted to see that happen. And that's one of the reasons why when I walked out of Bullard High School and I retired, I never looked back.
It's hard, because I always thought that's what I would do too, and I couldn't do it. I had to get back in a little bit anyway. But And in conclusion, well, we always ask everybody that we talk to if there's anything that stands out in your mind as you remember speech, as you see speech as it is today compared to what it was, something we didn't talk about. Is there anything you'd like to add to our chat here?
The only thing I'd like to add is that I hope and pray that there's a renaissance of the forensics that we all know contributes so much to humanity and mankind, and we're really missing it. And it's so sad that all of the hundreds of thousands of young people that never got to have that experience, that's the thing that concerns me most.
Thank you. Richard Beers, CHSSA Hall of Fame.